cramming 7 different free webinars into 2 weeks. So between now and I guess, 10 days from now, 9 days from now, you're going to get all 7 sessions. And we decided to do these sessions now because we're at the halfway point of the year and we see what the industry is thriving with and we see what the industry is struggling with. And we're here to share with you exactly what you need to know and do to win at a high level. For those of you that are not familiar, my name is Jeff Glover from Detroit, Michigan. I've been listing and selling real estate now for 22 years. This May, I entered into my 22nd year, and I have next to me Taylor Kerrigan, who's been with me for, 11 of those now, and she is the leader, 12, she says, and she is the leader of our sales team. She's also a real estate salesperson herself, director of operations for all of the Live Unreal organizations, as well as a coach for Glover U. So you've got a really good talk in store for you today. Now, before we jump in, I want to see where everyone is joining us from. So do me a favor in the chat where it says to hosts and panelists, change that to everyone so that way I can see it. So change that to everyone at the bottom where it says hosts and panelists, change that to everyone, and let us know where you're joining us from today. And if you're a first timer, oh wow, the Philippines is in the house. Great to see that. If you're a first timer, make sure you let us know that you're a first timer as well. Thanks for waking up with us this morning, Seattle, Dallas, Fort Worth. All right, I see some Florida, some Canada. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, well, we're excited that you're with us. And for those that are not familiar, for our first timers, Glover U is a broker agnostic training and coaching organization for trainers for salespeople and leaders from all over, of course, the U.S. and Canada, and as you can see, other countries as well. And not only do we put on a ton of great webinars and free webinars, we put out a ton of content for you to take advantage of through some of our resources and, of course, our big events and our coaching programs. So before we get into today's topic, which we're talking database and hybrid farming, specifically how to sell 100 homes annually through people you already know. And we're learning something about hybrid farming. We've been teaching it separately from database for years, and we're starting to combine the two because what we're finding is your hybrid farm is becoming part of your database. And so you're going to hear about that in just a second, but really, for those of you that have been to our stuff, you've heard of hybrid farming now for several years. We've been teaching it. A lot of people are having success with it. We're now tying it or intertwining it, if you will, with the database because they really are very similar in terms of the value that gets added to each. So we're going to be talking about both of those today. But before we do, I want to make sure everyone's got a workbook, all right? So make sure you have your workbook. It should have been emailed to you or in the link when you registered. Also, they're going to drop that in the chat again, so we'll get that dropped in the chat. It looks like this. It says maximize your database. That's how you know you're at the right place. Again, this is webinar number 2 of 7 over the next 10, 12 days. So make sure when you're done with today's webinar, you go back to gloveru.com/webinar. Take a look at the other ones. Take all of them or take a few of them or take none of them. Whatever fits your fancy, take advantage of them. They're all free. All right, so you should have your workbook. There it is in the chat. There's the link to it. Download that. Get that printed off. Why? Because we want you handwriting notes. A lot of the things that we share, especially during Monday's session. During Monday's session, we shared the new dialogues that you need to be using on your buyer consultations and in your buyer conversations. So that replay is up, by the way, if you didn't get a chance to go watch that. But people ask all the time, why am I printing off this workbook if it's just got a bunch of blank pages in it? Well, number one, it's got some good free resources in it. And number two, we do that because we want you to actually handwrite the notes. We find that if you handwrite them, they're more likely to stick and you're more likely to go take action on them. All right, so now that you have the workbook up on your screen or printed off, I want to share with you just a couple important resources, especially for our first timers. I saw that there were a lot of first timers that are joining us today. And really, although you have 9 different free resources you can access here, the easiest way to get all of these is by taking out your phone right now. Do it with me. If you don't have the Glover U app, I want you all to download it right now. Take out your phone, open up your app store, and I want you to search Glover space the letter U. I'll give you, for instance, there's stuff on our website that people are paying for that you can get for free in that app. So if you don't have that app on your phone, you're missing out. That's our most popular resource right now because it encompasses all 9 of these. All right, so you're going to search in your app store, Glover space the letter U, or just write that down and go back and do it later. But make sure you get that on your phone because we release more free products and resources for you there than anywhere else. That's number one. Number two, for those of you that are subscribers already, do me a favor. If you're getting value from the daily messages, let me know in the chat. Are you getting value from the daily messages? I can see the chat down there at the bottom. Do you want us to keep doing that every day? All right. Are you using that in your business for my leaders and my brokers owners? Are you using that in your team meetings? Are you taking that and turning it into material that you can share with your agents? Okay. So we're going to keep the daily message going. In fact, this morning I wrote about the 8 steps to a great buyer consultation. So hopefully you read that one. Now, if you're brand new to us and you have no idea what I'm talking about, okay, this is for my newbies on. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, just text the word morning to 55444. That's all you have to do. That signs you up. It's free. Text the word morning to 55444. All right. If you text the word morning to 55444, yes, you guys got the 8 steps. There you go. I'm going to keep, by the way, for those of you that are getting the daily message, I'm going to continue on the conversation of presenting our value to buyers because it's an important right now. Obviously, we all know what's happening on August 17th. We just left the Glover Agency sales meeting and had some good dialogue about that, and we'll be sharing that stuff as well with you. But anyways, I want you to make sure you take advantage of that daily message. Again, you're texting the word morning to 55444. Last but not least, all right, my marketing department, you've heard me say this a few times. If you were at our event last week in Traverse City, Michigan, or you're on our webinar this Monday, again, we got 5 more of these to go before we're done. Open up your YouTube app, and I want you to search Glover space the letter U. Glover space the letter U in your YouTube app. There's going to be a little bell, okay? That's the subscribe bell. Why do you want to subscribe? Because we're producing more video content and putting more video content on YouTube than ever before. Many times it's going to be on YouTube before it's even on our website. And that's free content that's designed to help you list and sell more homes. For those that are not familiar, these two right here sitting in front of you, we're in the trenches with you. All right. Over the last decade, I have personally averaged over 100 transactions a year myself. All right. What's really cool about Taylor is she's been behind the scenes on operations the last decade. In the last 2 years, she's been flexing her sales muscle and is not only leading our sales team, but she's also involved in real estate transactions herself. So you're hearing from people today that are in the trenches with you. So without further ado, Taylor, let's jump into how are we succeeding with hybrid farming and database, and why do those two kind of go hand in hand?
Yeah, so I'm super excited for today's session, specifically because these are 2 sources of business that not only our many Glover U coaching clients already succeeding with, obviously our team at Glover Agency is succeeding at a high rate with this, but also I'm personally succeeding with it. So as we're going through some of these tactics today, you're going to see I'm going to share with you like, hey, these are exact examples of how I'm using this. We'll have slides that we're sharing throughout today so that way you can see those examples, but ultimately I want you to walk away from today's webinar with a couple different things that you can do, whether you want to get started with hybrid farming or maybe you want to kind of get interested in having a neighborhood that you work and or doing more with your database. Because as we know that there's changes that are going to be happening as far as compensation and so forth and concessions, I'll tell you, the more that you are working with people that already know, like, and trust you, the less that those conversations are going to come up because they know your value, they know your worth. And so when we look at the opportunity to be able to, kind of evaluate the sources of business that we're working with and maybe add ones that are proven that we know work, this is the opportunity specifically with hybrid farming and with database. So let's first start with.
By the way, let me just say one thing. What I love so much about this is we've been teaching hybrid farming for a couple years. And Taylor came to me about 18 months ago and said, hey, I'm ready to learn the sales side of the business. And so order of business number 1 was, well, of course, you have to understand what our salespeople are going through, and you have to start implementing some of the things that we're teaching at Glover U and within Glover Agency, our real estate team, so that way when they're having one-on-ones with you, they take you more seriously. And she said, okay, I'm going to own my neighborhood. I said, okay, well, what do you mean by that? She said, I'm just going to follow the hybrid farming plan that we teach at Glover U verbatim and see what happens. Now, she started this about 18 months ago. Today, year to date, all right, we just checked this morning, the MLS this morning, in her neighborhood of well-established realtors, in her hybrid farm of agents that have been listing and selling in there for decades, this neighborhood that she just started working about 18 months ago, she's got 40 48% of the transactions year to date, 48% of the pendings and closed in that neighborhood in 6 months after implementing our hybrid farming plan. So when we say we're in it with you, we know what you're going through. There's a live example of it right there.
Yeah. So actually, if we can, Jeff, can we start? I want to start with the database formula that we talk about. Basically, when we're talking about wanting to succeed with database, you have to do 3 things. And so I want you to write this in your notes because you'll see how these this sentence ties these 2 topics together. So first, I want you to write down, to succeed with database, you have to ... I want you to write down the letter A. You have to add people to it daily. You have to add people to it daily. So if we want to succeed with database business, we want to do more, we want to see more transactions from people that know, like, and trust us, we first have to focus on adding people to our database daily. So letter A, write that down. And then letter B, I want you to write down, you have to provide value to the people that are in it. So when we cover the database formula later in this webinar, that's touching on letter B. You have to add value to the people that are in it. Now, if you really, really want to succeed with database and you want this to be a top source of business for you, you have to, letter C, do both simultaneously. So we have to be consistent with adding people to it. We have to be consistent with providing value to it if we want to see an increase in business specifically from database. So the reason why I wrote today's topic or today's webinar the way that I did is we're actually touching on those 2 parts. Letter A, adding people to it, well, that's hybrid farming. That's introducing yourself to a new neighborhood. That's taking market share in a new neighborhood that you maybe didn't have previously. And then letter B is providing value to those people in it. And then obviously that C is doing both simultaneously. So by the end of today's webinar, you're going to see how those 2 pair together so that way you can effectively do letter C, which is provide value and add people to it every single day. Okay. So let's first start. And Jeff, I'm actually going to ask you, because I feel like you have such a great definition. When we say hybrid farming, to you, let's just pretend, there is someone, we've got a lot of first timers on today's webinar. They might not know what hybrid farming is. I've had someone ask me before, like, so that means you have cows and whatever. And yes, I was at a demolition derby yesterday and was definitely surrounded by cows and pigs yesterday, but no, that's not hybrid farming. So What is your definition?
So it's kind of like farming. Most people know farming if you've been in real estate for more than a few weeks. Someone has mentioned to you, you have to have a farm. And a farm is a neighborhood that you work, okay? Generally speaking, what the definition of working a farm for years and years, for decades, has been send mailings, right? The definition of farming has been mailing once a month for years and years and years, and you'll get a return on those mailings. That traditional activity has been around for decades. It's not cheap. It costs a lot of money for postage and for mailing. Of course, postage has not gone down over the years, it's gone up, and it takes a long time. All right, that's traditional farming. Mailing to a neighborhood, usually once monthly for years and years until you get some serious market share. And then you have over here, on the other hand, circle prospecting. Now, circle prospecting is popular because it's cheap. It's usually done through the phone, over making calls or sending text messages or going out to someone's door every time you have a listing and a sale. But the reason why circle prospecting is not as effective as it could be is because it's like one hit and then you're out, right? You have one listing, you have one sale, you do your circle prospecting, and then you move on. Well, the challenge is that Advertising 101 says someone has to hear from you or see you 7 times before your ad registers. You ever notice how car dealerships never just run one ad and then you never hear it again? You notice how big law firms never just have one billboard. They have multiple ads, multiple billboards, because they know Advertising 101, it's not going to sink in and register who that person is and what they do unless you see it multiple times. So hybrid farming really takes the best of both of those. We eliminate the mailing side of it, although some agents do choose to still include mailings as part of hybrid farm, and that is one of the steps or ways to communicate, but it doesn't have to be done monthly. It doesn't have to be done on big postcards. It's really taking a blend of the 2. It's working the neighborhood that you want to work once per month, regularly, doing something once monthly, and that something might be calling and giving them information on a sale. That something might be hosting an event in the neighborhood. That something might be posting recent sales in the neighborhood Facebook group, doing something once monthly to a particular neighborhood that has high turnover. And my definition of high turnover would be a neighborhood that has 5% or more turnover. And that's pretty easy to figure out. You just do a circle of all the houses in your MLS. It'll tell you the one, you can figure out whether there's, if you think about it, for every 100 rooftops, are there 5 sales? Because if there's 5 sales, there's actually 10 sides. So you want to pick a neighborhood that has great frequency. And the definition of hybrid farming, to answer your original question, is working in that neighborhood once per month. And the definition of working is what we're going to cover.
So I just want to reiterate, and thank you for that definition. I want you to write this in your notes. How do I determine if my neighborhood or the neighborhood I'm thinking of is a good neighborhood to farm? So essentially, and Jeff kind of just grazed over it there, the formula that you have to figure out is I want you to look at that. So whether it's a subdivision, whether it's a set of streets, whatever it is, I want you to look in public record and I want you to see how many houses are in that neighborhood. So for instance, my farm actually has close to 800 units in it. It's I know some territories call it a townhome, some are condos, whatever you want to call it. It's essentially, in Michigan, we call it a condo complex. There's 800 condos in this condo complex, and the average sales price of these condos are like anywhere between $275 and $300, which is awesome. So first, what you want to do is you want to get an idea of how many homes are in that farm, okay? And then the next thing that you want to do is in the last 12 months, you want to see how many sales are in that neighborhood. And the reason why this is important in making sure that you have that 5% turnover is because if you're doing all of this work, you're doing all of these mailers, you're doing all of these events for the one sale that's going to happen in that neighborhood that year, what's the point? That one sale may be going to their best friend's, sister who they've known for years, and now you're not getting that ROI. Yeah. So we want to see at least a 5% turnover. Okay. And I can tell you from experience, the farm that I'm working with, again, there's about 800 units. In the previous year, 2023, there were a total of 36 sales. So that tells me that's a market to where I have an opportunity to take good market share.
Yeah, and that's about 4.75% turnover, which listen, if you find a neighborhood that's got 3 or 4% turnover, that's not a bad thing. Our whole argument around the 5 is because if Taylor decides to work a neighborhood that has 4% turnover, and I work a neighborhood that has 2% turnover, but the same number of houses, if we do the exact same thing, you're going to have twice the return on your time. And so that's why we really want you to strive to find a community that has 5. By the way, the national average is about 2.5%. Most neighborhoods are about 2.5% turnover. So you might have to work to find one, and it might be a little bit of a lower price range than you want, or it might be the next school district over that you want. But really, if you think about it, if you're going to put the time and energy into it, I want a neighborhood that's turning over regularly.
Correct. And so then what we want to do is we want to figure out that turnover ratio. Again, taking those two numbers, dividing them, and that gives you that percentage. Now, I saw someone asking in the chat, what happens if there's already an agent who maybe dominates that neighborhood? That doesn't mean that you can't break into it. There is an opportunity, and my rule of thumb is this. If there were, let's just say, 12 sales in that neighborhood and one realtor sold 11 of the 12, that might be a little difficult. But in this particular instance, there are multiple realtors in this specific neighborhood, not one who actually dominates the most. It's essentially now it's me, and then there's another second following me. However, you want to pay attention to that because then that tells you how much opportunity there is for you. So I wanted to start with that because I know that many of you may not have heard of the term hybrid farming, or many of you may not know essentially how to get started with hybrid farming. And so that's the first step. You have to determine and you have to pick your area, your neighborhood, whatever the case is, okay? So now let's get into, I'm going to share with you today 10 ways that you can really implement hybrid farming, and we use the term at Glover U, double down with hybrid farming, okay? So number one, I want you to write down, create a neighborhood Facebook group. Create a neighborhood Facebook group, okay? And now I actually have a slide that I think Glover U is going to throw on the screen for us. This is an example of my personal neighborhood Facebook group. Now, I want to tell you first and foremost, in order to succeed with a neighborhood Facebook group, it has to look like it was created by the neighborhood. This means I'm going to ask that you put your ego aside and that it doesn't solely support you. It doesn't solely promote you. If you're inviting them and you're promoting yourself as a realtor, they're going to know what the purpose is, and they're going to be less likely to join the Facebook group. So I can tell you, I started my Facebook group, I think probably like 2 years ago. Yeah,
and honestly, it laid dormant for 2 years. You didn't really start using it until the last year or so, or 6 months.
Well, it laid
for real estate. It was all, you were like building up credibility. You were
Yeah.
getting people to talk about, whose dog got let out or if garbage day changed or whatever. And now all of a sudden you're posting more about real estate. Sorry,
Correct.
go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, if we can bring that slide down really quick, just so that way everyone can kind of see me explain this. What I want you to focus on with your neighborhood Facebook group is I don't want you to be discouraged if it doesn't take off right away. I can tell you for the first probably 8 to 9 months, it was like me, my mom, and my sister engaging in there, just trying to get people talking. Now we're at the point we're averaging 1 to 2 posts a day in that neighborhood. So you have to try to do everything you can to kind of create engagement and get people talking about it. And so the more that you can make it seem like it was created by the homeowners association or created by someone important in the neighborhood, the more likely you're going to get people using it. Okay. So what I want you to write down under neighborhood Facebook group, number 1, I want you to write down, you should have an invite on every single on every single postcard you send out. So for instance, when we start talking about postcards later in the webinar, you're going to see that every single one, it's got a QR code. Join the Highland Lakes Facebook group. Join the Highland Lakes Facebook group. Number 2, every time there is a new neighbor in the neighborhood, make sure that you're reaching out to them and asking them to join the Facebook group. So I actually drop off a package at their door that has the postcard for them to join the neighborhood Facebook group. That's how you make sure that you're consistently getting new people in.
Mm-hmm. So you're sending out, essentially propaganda, if you will, not about you and your real estate team or company, but about this Facebook group.
Correct.
And it looks generic. It doesn't even look like it's coming from a realtor. It looks like it almost might even come from the association.
Well, if you remember when I first created mine, I actually created this Facebook group because I realized there wasn't one. And I'm like, oh, we teach this at Clover U. I'm going to go do it. And my neighborhood HOA actually sent me a cease and desist letter to take it down because, you can't do that, And so obviously we consulted with attorneys and so forth, and we found out that they were wrong. Oh, how the tables have turned in the last 2 or 3 years. Now I get an email from them once a month asking me to post certain events in the Facebook group.
Right.
So that way people will attend.
Because it's a communication tool.
Yeah. So it just shows, obviously, stick to whatever it is, consistency with what you want to do. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people are asking in the chat about, well, especially today, 18 months ago, and even still, there's still neighborhoods, without Facebook groups, but most neighborhoods today have a Facebook group already.
Yeah.
So what would you create a niche Facebook group, or would you create a second one that kind of competes with the first one, or both maybe?
So here's how I'll answer that. And we talk a lot about this in the Systems of Real Estate course, but my suggestion is twofold. Number 1, if there's already a Facebook group and it's getting a lot of engagement, instead, how can you be the top contributor in that Facebook group? Meaning, we have a lot of agents on our team who they'll join, let's just say Birmingham Moms.
Yeah.
And, Birmingham Moms has thousands of people in it, so they're probably not going to be able to compete with that. So instead, what our agents like Lauren and Rebecca do is they just make it a point to comment every single day. And by commenting every single day, if you've noticed in Facebook, they give you those top contributor badges. So now your comment starts to show up even more. Yeah. So if you're in a position that it doesn't make sense because there's already one that's driving, instead, how can you be the number 1 contributor in it? Yeah. Or B, if there is one that's already there and it's really not doing that great and you want to create a new one, create one that's more specific. Maybe it's, like for instance, Amy on our team, she created Moms of Northville Ridge. Right? Or parents of Northville Ridge. There was already a Northville Ridge Facebook group, so instead she got a little bit more specific. And now I can tell you, as the years have gone on, her group has outperformed the initial group. So that's what you're looking for there.
Yeah, and even if you, a lot of times, just using moms and dads as a scenario, a couple neighborhoods might feed one elementary school. Maybe think about the elementary school and create a Facebook group specifically to the neighborhoods that feed that elementary school.
Yeah, and let's be really clear here. You don't have to live in the neighborhood. I actually do not live in my neighborhood anymore. I've moved. I don't live there anymore. So I'm not promoting the fact that I'm specifically living in there. So you want to make sure that it's just a neighborhood that makes sense, okay? Yep. So for sake of time, let's move on to number 2. I want you to write down sponsor community events. Sponsor community events. I think we've got a picture of this one. So actually just like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I sponsored one of our community events that we had. It was it's the next slide there. There we go. It was our Strut Your Mutt parade, which was super cool. For those of you that know me, I have an animal rescue, so it kind of tied in cool together. And so this was something that I think the sponsorship maybe cost me $150 or $200. But here's the kicker. As you can see, Michelle was the one who posted this. She's the HOA president. So the more that you can do in the community or whatever, your farm is, and you can get people other than yourself talking positively about you, now there's a little bit more of that brand trust or that trust in you as the local realtor that, hey, the HOA president is endorsing me. That's a good sign. And I can tell you, just yesterday, I got a call from someone, and in her voicemail, she said, I heard you're the salesperson for this community. I need to buy a house and I want to buy it specifically in here. Can you help me? Yeah. That's what you're trying to create by doing this. Okay. So that's an example. Find community events. I can tell you I do 4 a year. I try to do 1 every single quarter. Again, we go into the kind of specifics of how to do those in some of our coaching programs. But again, you want to try to find 4 things that you can sponsor throughout the year, and they don't have to be big. As you can see, this was a little bit of a smaller one, but still super impactful. Okay. Number 3, and I'll have you pull that slide down, community give back. How can you give back to the community? So for instance, say your farm has a community pool, okay? Something that I do, I'm actually doing it again this weekend. I'm literally taking my cooler up there. I've got popsicles with a sign, and it's gonna be beautiful weather on Saturday. We're gonna, give out free popsicles to the kids. I think in total, maybe that's gonna cost me $40, but again, I'm getting my name out there. And what I heard you say in the hybrid farming and it's advertising 101, they have to see you multiple places, multiple times. Yep. So by hitting these things, and by the way, you don't have to do all 10 of these, but the more you do, the more market share you will take. Okay. So again, someone just put in the chat, back to school supply. That's a perfect idea. I might steal that from you, Julie. Doing something again to give back to the community. Okay. And number 4, I want you to write down postcards. I want you to write down postcards. Okay. And so when we talk about postcards, and I'm so huge on this, and you're going to see it when we switch gears to the database plan, you have to be, and I want you to write this in your notes, you must be entertaining. You must be entertaining. And so we've got an example that I'm going to show you. And this is essentially 2 different postcards. And you'll see they skew towards the side of like an infotaining or an entertaining. And the reason why that's important is because the more that you can appear to be the local community expert and know what's going on in the community, the more trust that they have in you. So I think we have a slide that we'll throw up there. This is 2 examples. So this is Amy Duncan on our team. As I mentioned, she has a farm as well. She's killing it. Actually, she was the one who inspired me. I'm like, man, Amy's having such a success with this. I should be doing this too. And so these are 2 examples of postcards that she has. So as you can see, one of them is a food truck that she has in her neighborhood. Again, we teach more about how to get started if you want to do food trucks or stuff like that. I have that in my notes. But on the left side here, you see best spots in Wayne County to watch the fireworks. So we do this because we want to show that we're community-based and we know what's going on in the community. And the biggest value here, and I want you to hear me, the reason why this is important is because if someone's not looking to buy or sell a home right now, if you're only sending out just listed or just sold postcards, they're going to flip that postcard front and back. And then what are they going to do? They're going to toss it in the trash. But look at this postcard on the right here, the North Full Ridge food truck. That's one that's going to be put up on the fridge. That's right. So now what happens from June 13th to September 19th, Amy's on this fridge of someone in the community. And so when we come from infotainer, we come from contribution or value or whatever term you want to use, now we're building relationships with them. And now we're in a position to where regardless if they're looking to buy or sell right now, we're creating again that brand recognition.
Well, and it's different than the classic, hey, here's what's sold, in the last month. And by the way, I made the comment, postcards don't have to be part of hybrid farming. That's kind of the nice thing with this. And it enhances it. And so what you're doing here, especially if you have a neighborhood that's been working the neighborhood, you might be thinking, well, we have someone who sends out all the sales every single month. Well, you don't have to do anything monthly. Get creative with stuff like this and do maybe quarterly. Yeah. At least this is something that will stand out.
Yeah. And so then our next one, number 5, I want you to write down. So number 1 was Facebook group. Number 2 is sponsor community events. Number 3 is community give back. Number 4 is postcards. And number 5, I want you to write down just listed and just sold. Okay. Just listed and just sold. And so yes, while we say don't, if you think just sending out just sold postcards in a neighborhood is going to help you, I can tell you it doesn't. Again, you have to do some of these things together. But if you're doing these other things and you're showing you're selling in the neighborhood, then you have more success. So I can tell you every single time I have a sale in the neighborhood, I am sending, in addition to my value postcards, the ones that we just showed you, I'm sending a just sold because I want them to tie the two together. Not only am I the community expert, but I'm also someone who's succeeding at a high value with selling properties specifically in our neighborhood. Okay, so you got to do both. Number 6, I want you to write down open house event. Open house event. This weekend, I'm hosting an open house at one of my upcoming listings that's going active or coming soon today. I will personally be there. And the reason for that is because 2 things will happen, and I can tell you now from experience. Number 1, you start to meet people in the neighborhood, right? The looky-loos. Number 2, it's really funny. I now recognize the same people coming to the open houses.
Yeah.
And so now I'm getting them as buyers. Like, clearly you want to live in this neighborhood. I've seen you at my last 4 open houses. Sounds like we need to be working together because I know when properties are coming up in this market or in this neighborhood before anyone else. So you have to make sure that when you're doing an open house, you're also creating it as an event. So what I'll be doing is I'll have like a mimosa bar, or I'll have like bagels or cookies and stuff like that. Something to make it fun. So regardless if they're looking to actually buy the property, I'm getting the neighbors to come and visit. And we teach this a lot at Glover U as far as how to kind of maximize open houses and make them work for you. You'll learn about me. I am so proactive versus reactive. There is no chance that I want to sit in an open house for 3 hours unless I'm doing the right things to get people there. Okay. Number 7, I want you to write down food trucks. Food trucks. Now, reminder, you don't have to do all of these. These are just your 10 options. It does not mean you have to do all 10 of them. This is just what's working personally for us. So number 7, if you want to throw up on the slide, Amy, again, is doing this example really well. She actually brought food trucks to her community. In the systems course, I teach you how to make this happen and essentially the methods to coordinate the food trucks. It's actually, and that's not the right slide, if you could go back. Nope. Oh, okay. One more. There we go. Nope. Next one. Nope. Sorry. Next one more. There we go. So there is a sandwich board sign that Amy has right outside of the food truck. And the reason why this is important is because think about it. For those of you that have gone to a food truck, it's typically not fast. You're typically waiting there for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And so this is actually sitting right next to the menu. And so now what she's doing is she's once again getting in front of everyone. And what happened is at our one-on-one, I said to Amy, I'm like, man, you know, how can we get you at the food trucks every single week? And she's like, they're like for 4 hours every single Thursday. You know, that's a lot. And so we started thinking outside of the box and we came up with this idea. And so now what's cool is she has people who are in the neighborhood who are filling out this form, entering to win the $50 gift card. And now she's following up with them. So she's getting contact information and she's pushing them farther down the funnel. Okay. Number 8, I want you to write down calls. Now, listen, you know, my coach is Kathy Schweitzer. She will always tell me I got to pick up the phone if I always want to be effective. And I'm a millennial and I'm always like, I'm going to find another way. She's right. Picking up the phone will always be the most effective. And so we want to try to find a way to call everyone in the neighborhood. My suggestion is quarterly. So like Jeff mentioned, whether we're calling and giving a market update or we're calling to remind them of the food truck or we're calling to remind them of the event that's going on, we want to make sure that we're making a voice to voice. And the reason why this is important is because sometimes people don't open their mail consistently. Sometimes they don't go to the community events. You have to try to touch them different ways because you never know what that consumer is going to respond to. Okay. And again, we give those scripts. If you are curious of like the Just Sold script or the Circle Prospecting script, you can download our script book. It's in the Glover U app, which Jeff already shared how to get it. Okay. Number 9, I want you to write down community yard sale. Community yard sale. Now I'll tell you, this is actually one that has worked so well for me. We've got a picture. This is our last picture of the hybrid farming of the yard sale that I helped coordinate in our neighborhood. So as you can see here, that sign I purchased, I think I bought maybe 40 of them. And what was awesome about this is our community yard sale was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in May, as you can see, all weekend long, 24 hours, you know, so what was that, 72 hours, my signs were at the entrance of every single entrance of our neighborhood, which there's like 5 of them. So talk about brand, like seeing people and them seeing my name on top of everything else. So the benefit here is like your cost of implementation is just the signs, right? And then obviously the coordination of the yard sale. And so now what's cool is as people have more yard sales, like independent ones and maybe not community-based ones, they know that they can rent these from me. And so, you don't have to go to Home Depot and buy them or like paint them yourself. We've got good-looking ones that you can use. So this is definitely one without a doubt that you can kind of make one-time investment and consistently reuse. And again, you can't beat being on the corner all weekend long, in your neighborhood.
Okay. And it's a value that they remember who provided it because they're staring at it when they're sticking it in the ground.
Well, let's also be honest. What typically happens when people are doing a big yard sale, it's usually because they're downsizing. And when they're downsizing, sometimes they're moving, right?
So it's not so much the road traffic that because you're not going to have your name bright and center. The whole focus is this way to a yard sale. And, sure, somebody pulling up next to it may be able to see your name. That's not what it's for. Putting your name on it is the reminder to the person using it who provided it.
Correct. Yep. And then last but not least, number 10 is newsletter. So I will tell you, I put this last because not every community has them. However, some of them do email, some of them do mailers. My personal community, they do a book every single month. I know, one of your first houses, the Huntington, whatever it was called, park, they do an email, right? So you want to see if there is the opportunity to sponsor that. Again, I know that there's not too many communities that do it, but if your community does, you want to ask to sponsor that. And the reason why that's beneficial is because in this instance, at least in my community, this is something that the residents in the community read every single month. And so if they're reading it every single month, that means I'm getting in front of them every single month, and that's what you want to accomplish.
By the way, a lot of people are asking what services we use for the numbers and stuff. If you go to gloveru.com/affiliates, you'll see everyone we use. You'll see Vulcan 7 on there, you'll see Red X, and make sure if you're going to use those services for data, make sure you go through those links because we've negotiated a better price than they offer to the public. So, we have people paying like $100 less per month because they used our link versus going to the public site. So that's gloveru.com/affiliates for any of the service providers that we use.
Yep, for sure. So here's your 10 steps to hybrid farming. And again, I want you to hear me. You don't have to do all 10 of these. This is just what's working in our market. This is what's leading to that 48% market share. And the more that you do, the more market share that you'll have. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, implementation, we'll get to that on like how you actually, I gave you some points on how you'll implement, and obviously we'll talk about how we dig deeper on this. But now we're at the point of, okay, I have sales. I have people that I have closed with from my neighborhood. What happens after that? How do the term I use is afterlife. What happens when a client has transacted with us and now, they're closed? How do I make it so that way they keep coming back and or refer me? I can tell you, I have one past client who I love her to death. She tells every single person who will listen in that neighborhood that they need to work with me. She is my number one spokesperson. So I'm making sure that she is always getting our database plan. So what is the database plan? I'm going to ask our team at Glover U to pull up that slide. We're going to start with the month of August. And this is the exact database plan that our team uses at Glover Agency, so you can trust that it's something that works. And when we talk about using a database plan, you have to make sure that it's something that people see value in. And so what's so important is that every single quarter you're reevaluating it, because what they maybe saw value in 2 years ago, they don't see value in anymore. And so you have to make sure that you're paying attention to what your clients are, saying yes and no to, and you have to make sure that you're evaluating your business accordingly. I always say the word inspect what you expect if you want to see the results from it. So let's first start, and we're going to breeze through some of these. You can obviously take screenshots of these slides. It'll also be in the recording. But you want to make sure that, and I'll preface by saying this, there is not anyone on our team who is doing all of these, 6 things, 5 things.
It seems overwhelming when I look at it. I have to do all this?
Yeah, no, please don't. Actually, your database would probably be annoyed with how much you're reaching out to them if you did all of these things.
These are just options.
Correct.
And is there a formula there?
Yep. So basically what we do is we encourage all of our agents that you should, by the end of the year, you should essentially, if you were to look at the entire 2024 at a glance and I were to grade you on your database plan, you should have called your database 4 times a year. You should have mailed your database 4 times a year. You should have hosted 2 minimum client events. You should have emailed them 12 times a year. And we call that the 4x4 by 2 by 12. That's our database formula.
So each month you're giving them, so like last month, for instance, if I called in July, then I'm probably not going to call in August. I'm going to pick something else from this list.
Yeah, and the reason why we present it this way is every agent's business is different. Every agent has different, seasons of life, or maybe their database responds differently in different months, or the demographics of the database, whatever the case is. And so if we kind of pushed you to do, okay, you have to do this call or you have to do this email, you might not actually get the return. So that's why we give you the options and then you choose from there. Okay. So as you can see there's a call. If you're going to call them, in our case, we're inviting them to that client event that you can see there in the month of August. What you can see at the bottom there on that second, the one in the middle, that's a VIP box. And I know we have a ton of Glover U coaching clients who have adapted this in their business after taking the systems course and have seen an increase in their business. And essentially what the VIP boxes are, all it is showing appreciation to your clients. And so I always tell people kind of focus in a couple different areas. Maybe it's people that you've done business with recently and you want to show your appreciation. Maybe it's someone who you haven't heard from recently and you're kind of surprised that you haven't heard from them. Or maybe someone that referred you and you want to show them thanks for that referral. Those are the type of people who get VIP boxes. By no means are we sending out, all of these coasters to all of our clients in our database. That would be super expensive, but you're paying attention to kind of like your top tiers. That's why they're called VIP boxes. Who are your VIP clients and how do you show them appreciation throughout the year? So actually, I tell you all 12 months of the VIP boxes and exactly how to execute them, where to go to buy the coasters, how to put them together, so on and so forth. As you can see there's those farming postcards that we suggest. Again, going infotaining. That's the chocolate chip cookies. There's National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day. It's typically, if I remember correctly, August 4th. So, getting those out, again, being infotaining and not always salesy. What I've personally experienced, and I'm seeing it more just being in the trenches, people will do business with you the less that you ask them for business. When you are just a genuine good person and constantly giving, the world gives back to you in return, right?
And what I like about this stuff and what you'll learn about our database plan, especially for those of you that end up in the Systems of Real Estate course where she shares the entire year, it's not like every single one is like, oh my God, that's so amazing. Thank you for all this value. It's just that every single thing is different than what they're getting from all the other realtors because as I've been teaching, and of course, we just completed the tour and we had the retreat last week. So many agents have relied on their CRM to add value to their database. And the reality is the CRM, if everyone's using a similar CRM, there's only like 5 or 6 that everyone uses, they're all sending the same things.
Yeah.
That does not make you stand out as a realtor. These things have to be things that cause you to stand out amongst your competition. That was like something we learned early on. So now everyone's using the same CRM, the same email campaigns, and everything looks the same.
Yeah.
The whole idea behind this database plan is that what you're sending, what you're saying, what you're doing is different from the rest of the agents in your town.
For sure. And I'm so big on, again, the more that you're involved with us at Glover U or myself specifically, I am like queen of efficiency, queen of proactiveness. I don't want to have to do things twice if I don't have to. And so that's why we're so big on the email. And I'm sorry, if you can actually pull that back up, you'll see the email is exact duplicate of the postcard. That's on purpose. Because listen, you already did the work for the postcard, use it again in the email, right? Instead of recreating the wheel, and just to your point, to stand yourself out amongst other agents when sending out roll your clocks back and all of those things, that doesn't work in our business because we're coming from value and contribution. And so repeat, what you did in the postcard via the email. Someone asked the question of how do you find all the national days? You can literally, I just Google it every single month. Show me national holidays in August or national, you call them daily holidays. Yeah. I'm sure today's like national, I don't know, banana cream day or something. So they're always crazy ones. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's just look at the month of September and so basically today we're going to just cover August and September. Okay. And the reason why we do that is because we want to give you kind of a taste of what we're talking about.
Well, yeah. And plus we only have an hour. So
correct.
This will give you an idea.
Yeah.
For those of you that want the whole plan, she'll talk about her program, but this will at least give you enough to get you going.
Yeah, for sure. So as you can see in the month of September, same thing, we're repeating. If you're going to call them, here's what we suggest that you say. If you're going to host an event, here's the one that we know that works. I can't see what is underneath that. Is that also an event too? I think, what does that say in Metro Detroit?
Event Harvest Festival, email Best Cider Mills, and then mail VIP box.
Yeah, so another example, that email of the Metro Detroit, it's the same thing, right? So as you can see on the right-hand side there, we came up with the 3 best local cider mills. How did we figure that out? We Googled it. We picked the cider mills. It's not like you necessarily, I think you wanted to go and taste the donuts at all of them, but we said no. Always. And instead, let's poll our agents and see which ones are their favorites. That's what we put on the postcard, and then we turned around and we also made it an email. Again, there's the VIP box.
Now, hold on a second. So in the South, they don't call them cider mills. What do they call them in the South? Are they apple orchards? So cider mills, they don't have a lot of cider mills in the South. So the point is pick something that's popular in your community in the fall, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you want to show that, again, we're showing that we're local. We're showing that, we are the community experts. Jeff, that white space is for the label of the postcard, so the address and so forth. Yes, you absolutely can write a personal message too. But in the mail there for the VIP box, I want to kind of call attention to this. You got to know the demographics of your database. So if you are an agent who maybe has a lot of families in your database, do your VIP boxes appeal to families? Yeah. And if they don't, can you do a mix of both? Can you have some that appeal to maybe your bachelors or bachelorettes? Can you have some that appeal to your families? You want to make sure that they're seeing value in it, because here's what I know. If they see value in it, you're staying top of mind with them and you're finding yourself in a position that they're going to do business with you. But if you're sending them something and it's immediately getting thrown in the trash, or they're looking at it for like 2 seconds or less and then getting rid of it, you're not going to see the return that you want when it comes to database.
One of my favorite things on that is look for something that's actually very specific to your community.
Yeah.
For years and years, I recommended, there's a town in Michigan called Kalamazoo. For my Michigan friends, you're familiar, and I'm sure we have some Kalamazoo folks on. They have this thing called Oberon Day. It's the day when this beer, you may be familiar with it, Oberon, you put the orange slice in it. What's the name of the beer? Someone will throw it in the chat. Anyways, They have this day that they release the beer for the summer. They release the beer for the summer, and I've been recommending for years, somebody needs to throw an Oberon party. And we've got some great agents out in West Michigan that are now throwing, Jen Hoffman and Rusty Warder are throwing a Oberon party. So think of things that are unique and specific to your actual market or to your farm.
Yeah, and honestly, the more you get involved with us, you'll see the suggestions that we teach. Like Laura Gelat, who's one of our awesome coaches who succeeds with database at a high value or a high rate, she hosts a pork and tunes party, right? And that's something that her database loves. It's something that works in her market. She does a barbecue and there's music, and that's one where she's got a couple hundred clients in attendance. Yeah. So you have to pay attention to what your database is responding to, and we're a firm believer of we'll try anything once, but we're going to really evaluate it afterwards and see where we can get better. So there's an example of the August and September database plan, and I hope you see value in seeing exact examples. I can tell you our agents at Glover Agency, they just got the email of, hey, we're already planning for September. Here's the box. Here's what you're going to do to sign up for it. So it's exactly what's working in our market. And, Jeff can attest to it. Every single year, we've seen an increase in our database business because we've gotten more intentional with our database plan. So if you're not seeing the results that you want so far this year, or you're not seeing maybe the repeat and referral business that you want, which, by the way, we didn't see years ago either, we realized what we weren't doing is we weren't providing enough value. So I'm going to take it back to the beginning. Remember, I told you there's 3 things that you do to succeed with database. A, you add people to it daily, AKA hybrid farming.
Yep.
B, you provide value to the people that are in it, AKA the database plan that I showed you. And then C is you're doing both consistently. So if now you're thinking to yourself, all right, love this, how do I take it from this webinar and how do I actually implement this in my business? And how do I succeed with C? Because what I can tell you from working with agents for the last 12 years and just being a coaching, agents across the country, they typically do A really well or they do B really well, but they don't do C really well.
Which is both simultaneously.
Correct. And the reason why is because they don't have a coach or they don't have a program that helps them with executing on both at a high level, which is why we introduced the Systems of Real Estate course.
So if I'm on this webinar and I'm thinking, okay, I understand why you guys are getting, because just to give you an idea, we do about 450 transactions a year from our database. That's 450. 6 years ago, the number was less than 100. And 6 years ago, not only were we doing under 100 transactions from the database, but our marketing spend was basically bankrupting the company. I mean, we were spending so much on advertising. So today, we have significantly dialed back our advertising. We've went all in on database, and guess what's gone up? Profits, which is, of course, the reason why we're doing this. So, Taylor, if I want to spend 16 weeks with you learning everything I need to know and do to grow a business, obviously we created the Systems of Real Estate course. I know a lot of people think Systems of Real Estate is probably for like executive assistants and operations managers, which I know a lot of people in that role go through it. But tell us, because you don't spend 16 weeks on these two things. This is just like 1 week each, essentially.
Actually,
right? Hybrid farming and database is probably just a couple of the 16 weeks. So what else would they expect to learn in Systems of Real Estate? And by the way, if you want to follow along, I'm on page 18 in your workbook here, and they'll get that thrown up on the screen as well.
Absolutely. So here's how I answer that question. People will ask me, how do I know if I need to take Systems of Real Estate? My answer is very simple. Do you sell real estate? Cool. Then you need Systems of Real Estate. And, I know Kate's on our webinar. She can attest to this. I've always said, if there is anything, if I have to do something more than once, there needs to be a system for it. And so essentially how this class was created and how these systems were created is, Jeff, I was working with you and we were selling, 300, 400 homes, and I was our only operations person. And so I had to figure out a way to still provide great customer experience and also be able to be effective and efficient. And so what happened is throughout the years, I've created, again, processes that allow us to have our business work for us. And so some of these systems, Jeff's right, I think there's 4 sessions that I teach on database. We just rewrote the content to have more in depth on hybrid farming, essentially the execution. So for all of you asking those questions in the chat, that's taught in the class. All right, how do you set up the food trucks? How do you get the phone numbers? How do you do the giveaways, whatever the case is? I teach you that. And I actually, the more you're around me, you'll see I'm an open book. I show you exact examples of everything. I'm pulling it up, our Canva accounts, I'm pulling up everything and showing you how we execute on it. And so those are only, that alone is maybe 6 of the 16 sessions. Other things that we cover, it's everything from start to finish. So essentially, Systems of Real Estate covers you from the second a client calls your phone and says, hey, I'm interested in buying or selling, all the way to, again, I'm going to use the term afterlife, after they've closed with you, and we have to continue to keep providing value to them. I teach you our exact buyer and seller drip campaigns that we use to convert through our CRM. I teach you how to communicate with clients. And by the way, listen, as a real estate agent, I know that you know how to negotiate. I know that you know how to talk to clients, but I actually give you the email templates in the videos that I use with our clients and we use at Glover Agency, essentially to speed up that process. And you'll see, one of the things that we talk a lot about is efficiency. If I can help you become a more efficient person, which I'm proven to do, then that means you can do more in the same amount of time, which means that you can sell more homes, which means that you can make more money and live a better life. And I can tell you, I've taught this class now, for 4 years, 5 years. We have hundreds of graduates of Systems of Real Estate client or coaching clients, and they'll tell you they are more efficient today after this course than before this course because of the tactics that I give you. Now, the last thing that we cover in there, and obviously there's tons of things, it's our 5-star review program. When I first started working with Jeff, he had like 40 reviews on Facebook. We now have over 1,600. And it's that 5-star review program that I implemented a few years ago that allowed us to do that. And I give you those exact templates. Huge open book of everything in regards to how to implement.
Well, and I remember the discussion around why we created this program. It's because most real estate agents, not all, but most real estate agents are really good at selling. They're really good at talking to people. They've got great personalities, good charisma, can go on appointments, they can get contracts signed. As you said, they can negotiate. Most are good at that. And also, most are not good at creating systems and figuring out, how do I duplicate this stuff, right? If you think about it for a second, if you stop showing up to work each day, if you stop showing up tomorrow, would you have automated business transactions, administration, operations, customer experience? Would you have things on autopilot, or would you have to jump back in every single time? And so what essentially Taylor put together is, behind the scenes, we did the heavy lifting for you. We implemented, we failed, we learned. We implemented, we failed, we learned. We implemented, we won, we learned. We implemented, we won, we learned. We took everything that we've implemented and documented what worked and what didn't work and put it together. So there's a 16-week opportunity for you to spend with the one that was behind the scenes doing it all while I was out taking listings. And it's $399 for 4 months. So essentially you do one deal. I mean, you're covering like 5 times the program.
Yeah.
But also if you are just curious and you want to see what the agreement looks like, if you text the word systems to 55444, just so you can see this document and get the details. Or if you're ready to sign up, I know a lot of you already signed up for this program. It starts the second week of August. Text the word systems to 55444. It's also right there on your screen. Taylor, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just the 2 last things I want to add. Number 1, to your point, can operations or admin take it? Yeah, absolutely. I would actually tell you first, if you're personally selling real estate, you should take it first. So that way you understand the right ways of doing things. And by the way, for those of you that have taken the course, I am very engaging with you during the class. I will help you after hours on certain things if you need extra help, because I know that that's helping us with our overall mission at Glover U. The last thing I'll tell you too is a lot of times people are like, man, you're doing this in August. I'm super busy right now. I don't really have time to implement these things. We are aware of that. And so as a result, what we do is we send you the recordings afterwards. And so you have the ability to go back and watch it later. Yeah. So maybe you're not ready to start hybrid farming right now, but you will be in 2 or 3 months. You have that recording that you can go back and rewatch. And that's what makes it so impactful too.
But also don't rely on that recording. Same thing I tell everyone for every group program. I want you on live, because when she presents, all right, it's 1 hour for once a week, 45 minutes of content, and then 15 minutes of Q&A. Take advantage of all of the stuff that she presents and ask questions on implementation during that 15-minute window. We specifically limit the number of attendees in the group programs, so that way everyone gets a chance to get their questions answered. So again, text the word systems to 55444 if you want more information, if you want to join Taylor starting in just a couple of weeks. And anything else, Taylor?
Nope. Class runs Tuesday. The first one is whatever that Tuesday is in the second week. I think it's August 13th.
Yep.
Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We start on time and we end on time.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks everyone for joining us. Good luck with your databases, your hybrid farms. Get in this program or one of our programs, and no doubt we will see you on Friday for another great free webinar. Go to gloveru.com/webinar to get the entire list of the remaining sessions. And if you missed Mondays, you can go watch the replay of that. That was all about buyers, adding value, and preparing them. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys in just a couple days. Bye-bye.